And luckily enough, we have the mayor of Fantasyland with us right now. How would you rank those guys?
I would rank them very highly. I'm very fond of all four of these guys, but for me it would be Jalen Waddle first, and I hope the little injury that he's dealing with is not going to be a problem, because if he's right and Tua Tagovailoa is right, Jalen Waddle could be a potential top 5 wide receiver along with his teammate Tyreek Hill. That's how those guys were trending last season. So Waddle's at the top of the list. Then I would go with Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, and Chris Olave, but Waddle is definitely the top of that group.
Have you done your draft yet?
Not yet.
A draft?
Coming up, though.
What's the name of your team?
Randy's keyboard. It's an inside joke here in the office.
Okay, Jamie, look, we're going to go with average draft positions right now. Let's try to help Chris out. We know what it means. Maybe some point we'll explain there. Quarterbacks who are undervalued or overvalued. So undervalued, you're looking at guys like Tua, Anthony Richardson. Overvalued, the top 6 guys. Explain.
So the way our average draft position is, it's a combination of all of our drafts. So super flex, 2-quarterback league, which means everybody's prioritizing quarterbacks first. However, when you're looking at a 1-quarterback league, if all of these guys are going as high as they are, and as you see here, Patrick Mahomes, the 3rd overall player, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts also going in the 1st round, I just don't love it. You also have Joe Burrow, you have Lamar Jackson. These guys are going basically in the first 2 rounds. I believe one of those guys is at pick 26 overall. So I just don't want to spend an early round pick on a quarterback again in a 1-quarterback league. We're doing a mock draft, for example, tomorrow on CBSSports.com, where it's a super flex league. So I have the 1st overall pick. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes first, but that's a different story. So in a 1-quarterback league, you should avoid all these guys. Look for somebody maybe like a Justin Fields at the earliest in round 4. But for me, I'm going to play the board. I'm going to let somebody else take all of these guys. I'm going to go after Tua. I'm going to go after Anthony Richardson. Outside of the top 12, I think both those guys have top 10 upside.
Here's a problem I always have. I always want to wait on a quarterback. And then
as you should, according to Jamie.
I know, but then you have these people who for some reason want to put 2 quarterbacks on the bench. And so, like, all of the top 20 quarterbacks get taken if I wait until round 10.
What do you do if you're in a league like that and they all start going?
You're waiting too long. So you got to obviously play how the draft is going. So what you want to do is, that's what we talk about tiers, is you want to wait till you get to a tier of guys in a certain round and say, okay, if I miss this one, I got this one still. And so you have to have a little bit of a cutoff point. So don't wait too long, Chris.
Okay.
Well, otherwise, you might be beating your keyboard.
You have a couple of guys, that's what Randy does, a couple of guys that are undervalued that you can get much later in the draft. Who are they?
At the quarterback position?
Yeah.
Well, Tua and Anthony Richardson. I think you look at those 2 guys. But if you go past those 2, it's a great position to wait for, because you have Daniel Jones, you have Geno Smith, you have Kirk Cousins, you have guys. Cousins, I guess, based on our ADP, going a little bit too soon. But you look at Geno Smith, you look at Daniel Jones, 2 of my favorite late-round options. But the 2 that I target specifically, the 2 that Amanda mentioned, Tua Tagovailoa, Anthony Richardson. Again, if Tua plays a majority of the season, so let's say 13-plus games, hopefully it's 17 games, with that receiving core in this offense, he could challenge 4,500 passing yards, 40 touchdowns. Anthony Richardson, if he runs for 1,000 yards, you're going to be thrilled about that. But even if he just gets that 700-yard rushing threshold, he could be a top 10 quarterback as well. And those guys, again, going outside the top 12.
Okay, let's move on to the running back position. You think that the top 10 or so properly valued as far as draft position? How far down do you have to go for somebody that you're thinking is too high or too low?
Well, what did we see this weekend? We saw a backup running back look like he might be the starter in Pittsburgh, and that was Jalen Warren ripping off a 62-yard touchdown run while Najee Harris was kind of plodding his way, as he usually does, before leaving the field. Now, Matt Canada, the offense coordinator for Pittsburgh, came out today and said, Najee's still our number 1 guy. We get that. Nobody's saying anything else. But if we see something different in the Mike Tomlin era this year than we've never seen, which is multiple running backs getting opportunities, then Najee's getting overvalued a little bit. So I still think he's the one you draft first, but now he's gone from basically a round 3 pick to a round 4 pick. And again, you see where he's being drafted right now. He's being drafted essentially still in the 3rd round. So I'm a little bit concerned about Najee Harris, and I love the upside of Jalen Warren, who could be an absolute lottery ticket.
How about a guy like Alvin Kamara, who in many years past, he's going to be a top 5 pick, and now way down the board because obviously he's not going to play every game, but you still think he's being underdrafted. How?
So you factor in the 3-game suspension. You have to clearly bake that into his value at this point. But once he's back, and I know there's some significant competition, they bring in Jamal Williams, who led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last year with 17. They draft Kendre Miller, who looked pretty good in the preseason game as well. But Alvin Kamara is still Alvin Kamara. I think for one more season, you're going to be happy about having him. And again, you're getting him at a depressed value right now, but I still think he has top 24 upside. So he's not being drafted as a top 24 running back, but I still think you should consider him in that range, which thankfully myself and my colleagues are doing that as well. We have him ranked as a still starting fantasy running back.
Let's go from running backs to wide receivers here. Somebody you have is overvalued right now, and a lot of name recognition, and a lot of people are going to be in these drafts are going to see Deebo Samuel, and they're going to go for it. But you're saying he's overvalued right now.
So you go back to Curtis's email to start the segment here. He was asking about a couple wide receivers that I think should be going ahead of Deebo Samuel: Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, and T. Higgins. And Deebo Samuel being drafted as a top 12 guy. He's awesome. I would love to have Deebo Samuel on my fantasy team, but not at that price, because there's so many mouths to feed in San Francisco. We know George Kittle is awesome. Brandon Ayuk, a special talent. Christian McCaffrey is a star. And the thing that made Deebo Samuel so special 2 years ago was his rushing ability. And what did we see when McCaffrey joined the team in Week 7 last year? The rushing touches disappeared a little bit. So he was very good with Brock Purdy, and you saw the preseason game. He was good with Purdy as well. But I think you're just asking him to be that guy again. He's played in the NFL for 4 seasons. 3 of those seasons, 12 PPR points or less. 1 season at 21 points per game. That was when he was doing a lot of work as a rusher.
Quickly, the tight end position, the one guy in the top 3 that's overvalued.
George Kittle, same reason, just because there's so many mouths to feed for San Francisco. Wait on that position a little bit. You still want to get good value, but Darren Waller's going after George Kittle. I love Darren Waller. I'm a little bit concerned about Kittle.
All right, Jamie Eisenberg here with average draft position, who's being overvalued, who's being undervalued, much more on the Fantasy Football Today podcast. And Jamie, you've got the marathon coming up, the Draftathon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, August 30th, we're going 4 to 10 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. to 10 o'clock Eastern on our YouTube channel. I'm sure you could find that wherever you follow us on Twitter, but it's going to be 6 hours of great information and doing it all for a good cause to raise money for the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
All right, Jamie Eisenberg, Dave Richard, Heath Cummings, and Adam Azer, part of that. Up next,